Hello, I'm Francesco Lecce Chong, music director and conductor for the Eugene Symphony. I am delighted to take this opportunity to thank the Eugene Symphony Guild for its more than 50 years of financial and volunteer support of the Eugene Symphony. The Guild's beloved and most successful annual fundraising event over the past 23 years has been Music in the Garden, a self-guided tour that unfortunately was canceled last year as a result of the ongoing pandemic. The Guild is committed to continuing this event, a special time for the community to view the plantings, trees, paths, and garden art in full spring bloom. This year, I know you will enjoy the Guild's exciting new way of experiencing 6 of Eugene's loveliest gardens, online and at your convenience. So sit back and prepare to be wowed by this fantastic compilation of 2021 gardens, along with some of your favorite music. Your support of the Eugene Symphony Guild helps us present the Eugene Symphony's many music education and community engagement activities, specifically including concert previews and our Young Artists competition. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Hi, I'm David Walker. For many years, KVAL has sponsored the Eugene Symphony Guild's Music in the Garden, a self-guided garden tour. And we're proud to support the Guild in its fundraising for our fine Eugene Symphony. Well, this year, due to the pandemic, the Guild is presenting Music in the Garden in an exciting new way, a virtual tour. This unique video production is sponsored by Jerry's Home Improvement Center and Lane Forest Products. So without further ado, let's get this Music in the Garden virtual tour started. The homeowners have been working hard to prepare their gardens and share the splendor, and I'm sure you're all eager to see them. Nancy and Franz St. George's outstanding garden, which started as an empty lot 29 years ago, now contains a wealth of unusual trees, shrubs, and perennials, along with water features and meandering pathways. We'll hear music performed by violinist Alice Blankenship and clarinet player Michael Anderson.
My husband Franz and I have lived here for 30 years now. This is one of my favorite entrances to the garden. I've been told it looks like a park when you open the door. There's so much going on right here, and you can see my love of flowers and design and definitely colors. The purples and the lime greens are really taking center stage right now. I have water features in various places, and my husband kind of bemoans that he has to keep all these running, but he does it pretty willingly. This is a paper bark maple, as you can tell by the bark that kind of peels off. It kind of looks like mahogany over here, doesn't it? One of my favorites, and the bird's favorite. My husband decided he wanted to grow hops, so he has hops growing against the greenhouse. This is kind of the beginning of the shade garden. Most of the plants have been pretty adaptable back here and are really doing okay. This is where I work when it's so hot that I don't want to be out in the sun. This is one of my favorite little irises, the white and green. These poppies are one of my absolute favorites.
So interesting.
Isn't that just gorgeous?
Flower.
Oh, this little arbor here is covered with clematis. It's a little slower this year. Maybe I'm just impatient for the purple blooms on top of there. It's certainly got a lot of growth. This Kusa dogwood is really in its prime right now too, with the beautiful soft blooms. This clematis is called Josephine, and I got it for my grandmother, whose name was Josephine, and it has put on an amazing display the last few years. These are my wood orchids here. This rose would like to be climbing up the house, I think. Look at all the blossoms on it. It's going to be glorious. My husband is a man with many, many talents, and I ask him to make something and he figures out a way to do it. We went on a garden tour in New Zealand a few years ago that my husband put together. And one of the gardens had mirrors at either end of a long garden bed. And so we stole that idea and put it up here. And we've actually tricked a few people into thinking that our garden went through there. When our son was home from school and just studying, he would sit up here in the summer with his books and spend hours studying. We used to be able to see Fern Ridge through the trees. We can still see some out of the upstairs bedroom, so it's okay. This garden, besides being a place of joy and a wonderful place to spend time, has really been a healing garden for me. I had a couple bouts with cancer about 12 years ago, and after my surgeries and treatments, in the beginning when I was trying to get my strength back, all I could do was sit on these paths and pull weeds out of the paths. And as the spring wore on and my energy increased, I was able to do more and more in the garden, and I just know that I healed better and quicker because I was able to be out here doing what I love the most. I had no idea years ago what our garden would look like at this point, but it's very pleasing to me, and it will be very hard to leave when it's time to move on from this garden.
Tim Gleason and Jenny Ullum's beautifully restored historic home and garden was previously owned by former Eugene Mayor Ruth Bascom and her husband John. And the music is provided by harpist Jane Allen and Patricia Lambert.
This is the Bascom house. This house was built in 1924, and my wife Jenny Ullum and I discovered it about 12 years ago. We're the fourth owners of the house, and the Giroux family, the McKinley family, then the Bascoms for 50 years, and now we have it. So I really feel quite an obligation to the neighborhood for this particular house. One of the things we love about it is the front porch. We've always wanted a front porch, and now we have one. So I love to spend as much time as I can sitting out on the front porch. I don't get to spend enough time, but it's just delightful. And this winter, we have a heater. We put a heater in out here, so in the midst of the pandemic, you could sit out on the porch even in the middle of the winter. It was quite a great outdoor living room for us. This has all been redone since we moved in, and this is all Brad's design. So on this side, he talks about it in terms of kind of living rooms and different rooms, and so this is sort of our kitchen garden room. We put in these raised beds, and it gets great with the southern exposure. It gets really great light.
I'm so impressed with your tomatoes. They're already huge at the beginning of June here.
Yeah, I think it's just, as with everyone else, it's just the year. I mean, it's this crazy spring we've had.
I think it's so wonderful how you've interplanted so many things here. I mean, you have your vegetables, and then you have your strawberries and blueberries. Are the blueberries?
They're blueberries. Yeah, they're blueberries and raspberries along the fence, and then also over here, the blueberries and the apples were here with John and Ruth. But we completely redid all of this. Ruth had this planted, and in fact, you can still see that was her potato patch. I stopped trying to control those, and the larger blueberries here were Ruth and John's. These blueberries. We put in the deck or patio area and redid this, and we actually use this a lot. Our daughter will have friends out and have a fire here.
This Japanese dogwood is just so amazing. This is the first time I've ever seen one.
Yeah, it's just pretty spectacular, and it's maybe 3 years we've had that. We put that in. Yeah, no, it's just amazing how quickly it's grown. And these rhodies are sort of a little bit past their prime, but still pretty awfully beautiful. We have a picture of the house when it was built in 1924, and there's this house, and then there's another house in the distance, and there are no trees. I mean, there's nothing in this whole area. This outdoor area is just, well, we spend the summer out there, and this winter we had a tent, and then with heaters, and actually used it. We had a wonderful Christmas Eve we have a tradition with another family, and we were able to do it. Not quite everything, but we were able to gather on Christmas Eve outside in our backyard. And then we try to keep this in herbs and lavender.
This is beautiful here, this entrance. It's so charming.
Well, and this was an area where this driveway was large enough basically for a Model T. So this whole area, I guess we did rebuild that part of the wall. Last summer, we were showing movies in the backyard on Friday nights, because people could come and socially distance, and it's just a great backyard. I mean, this is all heritage. This was all here. You know, this is what I think Ruth and John must have planted. And when I stand back and look at it, every now and then I realize, wow, this is pretty incredible.
Brad and Colleen Stanglin's garden is connected to Tim and Jenny's by a garden gate. The Stanglin's magnificent landscaping is designed to be an extension of the house, indoor and outdoor living spaces flowing seamlessly together. Music is courtesy of violinist Julia Franz.
We were fortunate to be in the neighborhood visiting somebody else's garden and looked across the street and said, boy, do we want to live right there. And so here we are today. The experience is really that we're entering the home and you get this sort of little glimpse of the backyard, which is the real feature of the house and garden, as many rooms front onto it. So the whole idea is to look at the garden through the house and to sort of bring the garden in through windows, doors, and just constantly keep visual stimulations, little stories that are in front of you. So here we've got our nice dining terrace here on the center piece, and then the big sort of wow factor of the backyard here. And there's a series of unfolding layers and lines with the stone walls, the deck, the cottage in the back. And what you see here is a little vignette in the back where the brick path leads us back to the very back corner of the garden. It's a nice quiet retreat area, and especially during these hot summer nights, it's nice and cool and pleasant back there. And it gets you out into the garden a little bit more. That's what our goal is, to constantly sort of move through spaces. And we've got endless amounts of variety and color, and we named the dining area Club 19 after COVID took us outside and sequestered us in all these spaces. So that's kind of the outdoor kitchen area, Club 19, and it too is a nice place to be in during the hot summer nights. Also, we're fortunate to be able to travel to Bali many times, and so you can see some of our artifacts that we brought home, these stone sculptures that we've put some landscape lighting in. So we've got some favorite pieces. This Ganesha here is now engulfed in nature. And then we like the little sound of water. We've kind of got a few water features that are in the garden back here. Nothing real fancy or big, but just the actual subtle sound of it. So the garden also has this central lawn area. We call this the lawn court. We can house many sort of events in it, and it's just kind of a nice cool area. That green grass just sort of cools you down during these times. And it also is framed by a series of paths. So the brick path sort of leads us back underneath the grape trellis. And to the right is another installation that we put together, or we call this our little topiary potager garden. This piece also came from Bali, this big jar. But it's a nice little formal garden to look out from the kitchen windows and the kitchen sink. So it's a nice little focal point. And then we can loop back around the garage and come up through some stone stairs. So here's our kitchen garden, kind of a nice summer seasonal garden back here. Now we're standing in the very back next to the cottage, or my studio, where I come and play around all day. And so you got a nice private space, really tucked away back in here. And then as we continue on, we're kind of now coming back to this little back corner that we find enjoyable to come and sort of hide out back here, you know? Mm-hmm. So you could go on this walk and do it again and again and again and again, and you would constantly marvel over things that are just ever changing. So this happens to be one of Colleen's favorite spots, the Buddha here, and she's placed this nice little rose in it. This is a beautiful perennial bed, and you're just seeing the peonies finish off here. We also have this Johnson blue geranium back here that's just starting to show its color. Yeah, it's ever changing, and you know, we say, okay, I don't think we're gonna need any more plants. And then we go to the nursery 3 times and keep on finding ways to add more and more and more. So yeah, the garden is just a place where we hang out all the time and live in it.
Randy Speck began his unusual garden 17 years ago, curating hundreds of plants native to the Willamette Valley and the Pacific Northwest. Music is performed by oboe player Cheryl Denise Weffler.
Well, the garden was started in 2005, and we had a big session with big equipment hauling off 70 cubic yards of topsoil that had been brought in and then abandoned. And we got down to the local clay, Philomath clay, and I knew what wanted to grow there, and that was our native plants. So this is a display garden of plants native to the West Coast and the Willamette Valley. And this is the nicest view in the garden for length, and from the tractor seat under the pear tree, you can look all the way across to the seating area. And you can also look up into the redwood tree, which is now 100 feet tall. It's very happy. The redwood tree is very happy. The birds are happy here, pollinators. It's all pesticide, herbicide, fertilizer free. Don't use any of that. The plants don't need it. That was written in a few minutes by a former garden client of mine. She came in to tour the garden and saw the rusty metal sculpture up on the pedestal at the front of the garden. And she put that word picture to it. And I said, Marcia, it's got to be part of the garden. So those were the first words to come into the garden. And then I always like to point this out. People can shake hands with the redwood tree. One long branch. I think it's the longest branch on the tree. This is a vintage piece, all out of welded metal, probably from the 1960s. Okay. He's been here for a few years. He's from Indonesia. He's carved out of something like a mahogany or a teak. And when I spotted him in an antique store, I knew where he had to go, right here in the shade. So the Mirren Garden has a swing bench and 2 rose towers. You see a lot more rusty metal, but look at how it just really works together nicely. This is a great spot for coffee in the morning. And then you find the raised beds where we've got strawberries and blueberries and gooseberries. And just coming on are sweet peas. So we've got parsley and arugula and favorite thyme, and the basil is just coming in, and chives, and it's great to come out in the morning and pick fresh herbs for the kitchen. These are California ceramics, these big old strawberry jars, and they're obviously well suited for the hens and chicks. He was supposed to keep the squirrels away, and it didn't work. Look at the blueberries coming on. This one's called Chandler. It's about the biggest berry out there for a blueberry. It looks like the strawberries are going to be spectacular this year. This is an old variety that I used to pick as a child called a Schuchsen. They get really big, really red. This is a dwarf columnar apple, the only kind that could grow in this tiny little space. It's literally a pole. The variety is called North Pole. And I got to smell apple blossom this spring, and we've got little fruit coming along. Here's a new addition to the garden, this quote, "Accuse not nature, she hath done her part. Do thou but thine." John Milton, Paradise Lost. Well, Sue, you said it was like walking through a meadow, and it truly is. This is the lower meadow, there's the upper meadow, and now it looks like we're headed for the terrace. A nice place to sit. The name of the garden is Trees Planted by Streams of Water, and you can see we're in between trees. I guess the culmination, really you see it now, of that name. There's trees everywhere. So heart of the garden right here, this little terrace, and even though it's right on West 20th, you wouldn't know that. The little house is just 6 to 7 feet from the property line on the north side, so all of the garden and any sense of depth and practicality had to happen on the south side. And this is focused on the access of the living room window and I get to look out at this every day, and it's very enjoyable. But it's an adventure working with native plants, and it's a learning curve, and I would encourage anyone to try it. Environmentally, it's a win-win, and it is for your heart and soul too, I would say.
Maxine and Bill McWhorter's garden has been a labor of love for 27 years. Now it's a peaceful haven filled with shrubs and perennials for multi-season interest. Cellist Dale Bradley and violinist Alwyn Wright are providing the music.
Okay, when we moved here, the house was pretty new and nothing had been done very much. There was some lawn and a lot of Douglas fir trees, and we wanted to have more plants and flowers, and took out lawn and added plants. And we've been here for 27 years now. These are hardy geraniums that just kind of come up as volunteers every year. And then the alliums come up through there. And then this is the clematis. When the flowers are blooming, they match the colors of the mutabilis rose. And this is a sunny part of the garden that gets the roses. And the one on the left is Betty Boop. And my husband saw it blooming down at Shore Acres on the coast. And he said, "Oh, I want that rose." And I love the way the colors change. And then we have clematis that are coming up through different shrubs. That one's called the President, that purple back there. And this is one of my favorite areas on a hot summer day because it's very shady, and the hostas and epimediums like it down here. At one time, this area had a big oak leaf hydrangea that died, and then a viburnum that died, and so now we have new hydrangeas and clematis and hostas, and there's a spotty dotty podophyllum back there. And this pink flowering shrub is a deutzia, and then the tall alstroemeria is coming up through it. That's one called Munstead Wood. It's not a very pretty name for a rose, but it's a beautiful flower. And this one is Sally Holmes. And when it blooms, almost all the buds on that stem will bloom at the same time, so it looks like a wedding bouquet. And then I took a workshop several years ago on how to make a fern table. Yeah, some of the ferns are more vigorous than others. My sister in Texas sent that to me. It's too hot where she lives to do much gardening.
If this was my garden, I would be in that shady little oasis down there all the time.
All the time, yeah. One nice peony bloom on that one. Lots of delphiniums don't last very long, but the ones that are growing up right there have probably been there 15 years or more. And that rose probably grows 4 feet every year. We prune it way down and it shoots up again. And that's one called Graham Thomas. And I just discovered a new color of alstroemeria, the locine, the purple back there. And then this is Westerland rose. It gets quite tall. Yeah, and it shoots way up. We're fortunate to live next door to a 12-acre undeveloped city park. So we have a borrowed landscape. It's very quiet, a lot of deer. Birds come from over there. It's really pretty in the sunset when the sun's coming through all the trees. Before I retired, I embroidered a little thing that said, "A garden is a thing of beauty and a job forever."
That's very true.
Yeah, it keeps you busy.
Don't be deceived by the simple front yard here. Perry and Hollis Prochet drew inspiration from the design of the Palace and Gardens of Versailles and other memorable trips abroad. Our musician is flutist Kristen Haley.
So the concept for the garden in the front is based on the idea that Frank Lloyd Wright came up with. When you would go into his houses, you would come into a very narrow entrance, and then it would open up into a wonderful space. And that's what we've tried to achieve here. When you enter, you're entering into one of the 5 rooms in the concept of this garden. The Italian room with the terracotta seeming pots. We would love to have lemons in them, but because of the weather here, we can't do that, so we've chosen to do Russian sage. And we've put up the shutters and styled the colors to be sort of a Tuscany look with the yellow and the green. So the overall concept of the garden was built on an axis, and this is from Linotte in the 1600s. You would start inside the house where there is a round window, and looking through the arch in the house and through the back door, across the patio area, through the pots, to the pond, and then through the hedge and to the back bird bath pond. It's a straight line, it's an axis. So there's a concept that came from that era of man's domination of nature, man's harmony with nature, and then nature rampant. And so the 3 gardens that start here at the very beginning progress through that. This is the formal, this is man's domination over nature. Everything is symmetrical. Other than the red pots, everything is straight lines, sharp corners. Man's dominating nature. And the pots just add a little pizzazz to that. We leave man's domination of everything and enter into Middle Earth, where it is man in harmony with nature. As you can feel when you walk in, it just drops the temperature 5 to 10 degrees. It's a wonderful place to be. In the summer, it's absolutely pleasant to be able to sit here. And the sound of the water and the coolness, it's a very calming, refreshing place to be. So when you go down this pathway, you're leaving man in harmony with nature, and you're starting to enter into where it's just rampant nature. Everything over here is just chaos. You know, whatever is happening happens. With the fallen log, with the climbing hydrangea. Obviously the gunnera sets a tone. It's also called the dinosaur plant. If you go to Giverny, where Claude Monet's garden was, you'll see the gunnera right at the pond edge. So it has constant water, constant decomposing, and then they love it. This Singapore tree, which it's just here because Perry really wanted one. And this is a Montana clematis that will grow 20 to 30 feet high. It'll look like nature taking over, and you know, it should work out really fine. This is a wonderful place to sit in the morning, but it's a wonderful place to sit and watch the birds take baths. You sort of turn into wallpaper as far as they're concerned. So now we're going into the vegetable garden. This is the 5th and final room. It is obviously very structured, so we'd have raised gardens. This is a way to have a vegetable garden that I can actually tend. But as you can see, there's always going to be flowers. The red poppies, those are poppies from seeds from the Chelsea Flower Show. I've always loved those poppies because you see fields of them. One thing that I just love about this path, this beautiful burgundy maple, and then that chartreuse hosta. I think it's just, I love it. And of course we have herbs here, there, and everywhere, along with flowers being here, there, and everywhere. This is actually just 2 pear trees, and I let this come up because I wanted 3 across. Those are 3 different kinds of apples on that side and 2 different kinds of pear on this side. Oh, this, yeah, the obelisk. Perry found this piece out at Bring, so he built this plinth out of concrete and put it up here. So it's one of those found objects. I think that's one of the amazing things about this, that it's just a backyard. You know, it's just everybody's backyard from that era, from the 40s.
Right.
Very small backyard, but because you break it up and make it into these different rooms, you end up feeling like it just goes on forever.
I hope you've enjoyed this lovely virtual Music in the Garden and will express your appreciation with a donation to the Eugene Symphony Guild. Your donation will be used to promote the Eugene Symphony and its many community education and outreach programs. And we'd like to thank our title sponsors, Jerry's Home Improvement Center and Lane Forest Products, for their generous support. Additional support has come from garden sponsors Johnson Brothers Garden Market, Gray's Garden Center, Roger Langlier's Construction, and New Twist in the 5th Street Market. And thank you again for supporting the Eugene Symphony Guild.